Ben Jarvis has teamed up with explosives expert Paul Birch to explore the destructive power of the magic flying crow.
We're going to do this first test without the explosive warhead in the Crow. The main reason is this is a very unusually shaped rocket, and anything with wings can inherently be very erratic. So before we put explosives on board it, we want to launch one, see how it flies, see how far it flies as well, and then make any adjustments before we add that extra level of danger of putting an explosive warhead on the front of it.
Test flight reveals serious problems with the rocket's structure.
It tried to accelerate to like sort of, you know, over 100 miles an hour in less than a second, and I think the aerodynamic forces on the wooden wings and tail were just too much and they just tore off. The ancient Chinese had many years and lots and lots of gunpowder to experiment with to get these things to work. So given that was our first test, it's not surprising that it wasn't 100% successful.
Ben hopes that less powerful rockets will be more stable. Each engine now holds only half the amount of gunpowder as before. He prepares for a test with a full explosive payload. He set up a 20-foot wide target 140 feet away.
We think with these more gentle engines we're now using, we should actually get a proper straight flight. With a charge of sort of half a pound of gunpowder, which is roughly what we had in these Crows, you really wouldn't want it to land anywhere more than 40, 50 feet away from you, otherwise you'd be in real trouble.
7 centuries after the magic crow was first described, Ancient Discoveries has revealed the devastating truth behind the legend of the flying bird bomb. All the devices we've investigated so far have been distance weapons, but wars are won by men on the ground. No airborne weapon can match the intelligence and versatility of a paratrooper. The airborne assault warrior relies on the parachute to enter the battlefield. Ancient Discoveries delves into the mystery of the first known parachute, with the ultimate test of ancient technology at 6,000 feet. And we'll explore the fundamental principle of the parachute by dropping a man from the sky, holding only an umbrella. British Army skydiver Jay Webster is 6,000 feet above the ground. He's about to leap out of a hot air balloon using just 2 umbrellas as a parachute. Jay is investigating an ancient Chinese 12th century text known as the Lacquer Table History. It records how a thief escaped from the top of a 140-foot mosque in the city of Canton by using 2 umbrellas to float to the ground. But is this possible?
3, 2, 1. See ya! Bye-bye.
After descending 100 feet, Jay's forced to deploy his backup parachute as the umbrellas collapse.
Oh, that was awesome, yeah, it was really good fun. The umbrellas lasted a real lot longer than I thought they would.
The main reason the umbrellas worked for 100 feet is because they were able to create drag or air resistance before collapsing under the extreme forces at work during the 120-mile-per-hour descent. By creating a force opposite to gravity, the umbrellas slowed down Jay's descent. This is the principle that underpins modern round parachutes. It may well have saved the Chinese thief's life when he leapt from the top of the mosque. But this was not man's only attempt to conquer the skies. In 1617, the world's first known successful parachute test was carried out from a 4-story building in Venice. The parachute was built by Croatian inventor Faust Verancio.
Hardly anybody's heard of him, and it's only now that this has come to light that, realistically, I think that he deserves a lot more credit.
Yet much mystery and intrigue surrounds this extraordinary milestone in man's quest to conquer the skies. Although Verancio left a clearly printed diagram of his parachute, he makes no reference to the materials he used or how they were attached to each other. This has led many researchers to doubt the claim that Verancio was history's first parachutist. The search is on to understand how Verancio could have succeeded where other ancient inventors had failed. The greatest Renaissance inventor and artist of all was Leonardo da Vinci. In the 15th century, Leonardo imagined and sketched what is generally considered to be the first design for a parachute. But there's no evidence that Leonardo ever built or tested his parachute. It simply remains a design confined to the pages of history. A century later, Verancio set out his own design for a parachute, possibly influenced by Leonardo's sketch.
Whatever drove him to do it, possibly he might have seen somebody jumping from a burning building, which would have not been a very pleasant sight, and that might have inspired him because there would have been some sort of inspiration to develop this. So there must have been a need. He wouldn't have designed it and built it and jumped it just for the hell of it, I don't think. I think it would have been there would have been a need. And I think that his only experience of people coming from great heights would have been a bad one. So I think that it would have been with a lot of trepidation.
Using the illustration, leading skydiver Ray Armstrong and parachute rigger Alex Flint are attempting to recreate and test the Verancio parachute.
One of the biggest challenges was the simplicity of the drawing and how small the drawing was that we had to work from, and trying to second guess how it would have been constructed. For example, we knew that he jumped it and that he survived, so therefore there were certain things that would have to be in place. The thing would have to remain in one piece by the time it hit the deck.
In the 17th century, Verancio would have faced the challenge of finding strong but lightweight materials.
Based on the sketches that were available from Verancio, we saw that it was essentially a wooden frame with a fabric covering. The bamboo, we've decided to go with that because it's light and strong and would have certainly been available at the time.
For the fabric, the team has decided to use habutai, a type of silk that's lightweight and strong. It's comparable to the silk that would have been available to Verancio in the 17th century. But they need to use a sensible and reasonable interpretation for what the design does not explain.
The problem that we'd have is if we were to lash it to it, which some people have interpreted that it was just almost sewn to the edge, then it would have point loading, which would weaken the parachute, and potentially it would then start disintegrating during the descent. So a simple thing to do would be just to put a sleeve, so that we've constructed it so that the poles can then just be fed up into it. So then it spreads the load all the way across the sides of the parachute, and the fabric then is just decelerating as the wooden frame is taking the brunt of it.
According to historical sources, Verancio successfully landed his parachute from 4 stories up, a height of around 200 feet. But if our skydiver is not successful, he could be killed. The solution is to test the parachute at a much higher altitude, so our jumper will have time to open a reserve. The goal is to see if the chute lasts the 200 feet necessary to have landed Verancio safely on the ground. The test day dawns. Verancio's parachute has not braved the skies for 400 years. The team works to rig it to the base of a hot air balloon. The balloon will lift the parachute and Ray 6,000 feet above the ground into the unknown.
There's certain variables that we categorically won't know. I'm an advanced parachute rigger, and I'm used to using modern technical textiles to produce the best result. Now, this has stretched my understanding of materials, and there is going to be things that we just can't have taken into account, i.e. until you've suspended something below a balloon and it started moving, we don't know the stresses and strains that are going to be put onto it.
Ray's safety will be in the hands of Alex, who's responsible for rigging the parachute to the base of the balloon basket.
We haven't had any opportunity to test the equipment, the bamboo canes that form the structure of the parachute. It's a natural material. We know it's strong, but it's difficult to quantify its own strength because it is a natural material.
400 years ago, Verancio had no idea if the parachute would break his fall or disintegrate and send him plunging to his death.
There are so many things that could fail. Hopefully we've covered everything.
The team's major concern is whether the silken bamboo frame will stand up to the forces of drag.
The real test of this parachute is if we can drop and fall for 5 to 10 seconds with it staying intact, then it has been a success, because that would have been enough time to slow the descent down so that he would have survived.
The most critical part for the team is the initial takeoff.
We have to get the balloon off the ground, get the parachute under the balloon, and then Ray under the parachute.
Before every jump, I do get a bit nervous. Have a good one.
The balloon takes 12 minutes to climb to 6,000 feet. If the parachute holds together for 10 seconds after its release, it means Verancio would have survived. The moment of truth has arrived.
Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
Despite the team's fears that the parachute would disintegrate after 10 seconds, it's still intact after descending for a minute. But can Ray safely land the Verancio design? Suddenly, Ray hits a problem. The wind is blowing him away from the drop zone towards a housing development. The parachute is at the mercy of the elements. For his own safety and that of the people on the ground, Ray has no choice but to hit the release and deploy his reserve chute.
That was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It was far more successful than I could ever imagine it was going to be. I was expecting a descent rate of 50 feet a second, and it was descending at about 22, 26, which is a very, very, very survivable rate of descent.
A descent rate of 22 feet per second is comparable to the modern parachutes used by today's skydivers and base jumpers. Like Verancio's parachute, they're shaped more like an aeroplane's wings than the traditional round-style parachute.
I was even hauling on some of the ropes to try and distort it, to put some input to steer it, and I did actually get some input and started to move it around, which I categorically wasn't expecting.
Verancio's design acted like an aerofoil during its flight. Not only did it create drag, it also created lift.
I was even expecting it to start falling apart in the air, but it didn't. So to have 2 minutes of descent, and it was actually, I've jumped more modern parachutes, round parachutes, that weren't as stable. It was a very, very stable platform with a very good rate of descent. It was excellent.
Ancient discoveries has shown that throughout history, military commanders have coveted the destructive power of airborne weaponry.